Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Live at Lunch. It's going to be a late one because where I'm at, it's like 2 hours or so past noon. So I apologize if this is a little too late for lunch, and we'll just have to roll with it. I wanted to talk to you guys about a few things and some things that have been on my mind and some things that perhaps you've been thinking about too. We're going to talk about critical race theory today. We're going to talk about the Holocaust and how those two things tie into each other, which sounds very strange because it doesn't seem like they would. But let's start with Holocaust because recently I had just watched, I believe it was The Last Days, is what it's titled, as Steven Spielberg film on Netflix that I think was directed in 1998 or something like that. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Steven Spielberg made this movie called The Last Days, and it interviews, I think, 5 individuals from the Holocaust. All these individuals went through the Auschwitz camp, which is not good, obviously. They had horrible, horrible experiences, and their stories are just remarkable at how they were eventually put into the camp and, um, you know, the inhumanity of it all. Um, One thing that caught my attention, though, and this was very early in the film, is all these people that Spielberg had interviewed were from Hungary, so they were Hungarian Jews, and all these people had mentioned in their own way how things in the 1930s, late 1930s, even early 1940s, um, things moved very slowly. Um, Hitler didn't invade Hungary first. Remember, if you know your history, Hitler invaded Austria first, and then he invaded Poland and several other countries, and it was the cascade effect, eventually all the way to Paris, France, and conquering most of Europe, which is, of course, very sad. But we know the story of how he didn't succeed in the end, but again, in the early uh, period of World War II, Hitler was extremely successful when it came to conquering countries. Um, but all of these individuals from the Auschwitz camp had basically said that things moved very slowly in Hungary. People had a different view on life. Obviously, if you were in the city, things were a little bit more fast-paced. The news got to you very quickly. But if you were in the country, which most of them were from, nobody really cared about what happened in Germany, and no one really cared about what happened in any other part of Europe other than their local town. So when they heard that other Jewish people were being persecuted, it was almost like that's just an impossibility. No one really is believing that, and no one's really enduring that, right? So that's what the talk of the town was. I can't tell you exactly what specific town they were from. You have to watch the film for yourself. But there was one particular woman that was basically saying that, you know, every month, every few months, things progressively got worse. But the thought amongst the community was that would never happen in Hungary. Hitler's in Germany, Hitler's in Austria. That doesn't happen here. Well, history obviously proved them wrong, unfortunately, and eventually Hitler invaded Hungary and captured a lot of Jewish people, putting them into ghettos and eventually putting them onto cattle cars and into death camps, which is extremely sad. Um, Something that uh, struck me again was the fact that things didn't move like light speed. It took years for Hitler to go from one country to the next, and finally into Hungary, uh, for this master plan of conquering Europe. Scary. But those people had that mindset of, it will never happen to us. It's just strange that that could also be applied to today, to the United States, and what we, and I say we as I'm a citizen of the United States, I don't know where you guys are, but we have that same mentality that death camps, that'll never happen in the United States. Something that happened in World War II or the Cold War in Russia, or something that happened in China, like, the Mao regime or stuff like that, that will never happen in the United States. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? So just something to think about, which is, again, just something to think about. You can always learn from history, especially the Holocaust and especially World War II. It's scary to think that some of those ideas are coming back in critical race theory. So some of the ideas of the Holocaust are now being translated into critical race theory. Let me explain. So recently, Israel had a bout with Hamas. I think it's dying down a little bit, and I honestly don't know if I'm completely wrong. Please let me know in the comments. But at least here in the States, we're not getting as much bad news as it were compared to a few weeks ago, where Hamas, a terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip, were flying missiles into Israel. Well, those of us Americans in the left, on the left side of the political aisle, mainly Democrats, praised the terrorist group for basically terrorizing Israel. Why would you do that? It's unbelievable, and I'm sure this video will be taken down, or it'll be criticized or flagged because we're talking about this, but oh well, we have to talk about it. And one of the books I'm trying to wrap up is called Saving Truths by Abdu Murray. You guys got to check that out. And this was written pre-pandemic, but nearly everything he says is incredibly applicable to what we're dealing with in the States and around the world. Okay, so the Holocaust and critical race theory, how does it tie into each other? Remember when that lady in that film from Steven Spielberg, from The Last Days, was basically saying, things didn't move too fast. They moved really slowly, especially in Hungary. People didn't think that those crazy ideas that the Nazi regime was implementing would ever come to Hungary, or would ever even touch the land or the people. Well, eventually it did. And that's what's happening in the United States now, where we have a hatred for Jewish people for no reason at all, because apparently Palestine needs to exist, where we've had so many different pieces of legislation or treaties at the UN calling for a two-state solution for Palestine and Israel to coexist. Multiple things and progress has been made with that. More recently, the Trump administration moving the American embassy to Jerusalem and out of Tel Aviv, I believe. And even during the Bush years and the Clinton years, there's certain things that have happened to help the state of Israel, the nation state of Israel. So something to think about, that all of a sudden we're seeing this shift in the atmosphere of appreciation for the country and the people, the Jewish people. So it's very strange, and it's very alarming, because I don't want to see that again. I don't want history to repeat itself with the terrors and the atrocities of the Holocaust now starting to revamp. And again, we don't see any death camps or anything like that. There's as far as I know, nothing like that in Palestine. But people are firing missiles at each other, and getting funded by other nation states, mainly Iran, I'm sorry, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other nation states in the Middle East that don't really like Israel. So something to think about. We don't want history to repeat itself. With critical race theory in America, for us, we have this mentality that white people had this unforgivable sin, that slavery happened and all white people are to blame, no matter what kind of background they have, whether they're Italian, Irish, English, Portuguese, it doesn't matter, right? And I'm sorry, it's kind of raining now, so isn't that interesting? So to make this long story short, we're getting those same ideas just turned in our face in critical race theory. And from those moments in the Holocaust that led up to the atrocities of Auschwitz and Dachau and other death camps, now applying to a race war between white and black. Where I grew up in the 90s, we never had that. I had great friends that were African American or black or whatever you'd like to politically correctly call people, right? So I'm kind of underneath my umbrella. I'll try to wrap this up as quickly as I can. Saving Truth, Abdu Murray. Highly recommend. This isn't the book that's going to give you all the answers, though. It's the Bible. Let me move inside really quick because it's starting to get a little wet, but we're live. This is what we got to do. All right, so we're inside. And come on, pup. Here's Gracie. That's what we got to do. All right, anyway, so Saving Truth. I want to leave you off with this because this is so important. And then I'm going to try to give you a scripture to keep in mind. Okay, so Abdu says, the gospel message is that we are all sinners. Wow. White and black people, Arabic people, Jewish people, we're all sinners. Utterly undeserving of God's grace and mercy. We owe God a debt and are unable to pay it. Jesus paid that debt for us. Being fully God and fully human, Jesus was able to live a perfect life so that he had no sins of his own to pay for and could hang on that cross as our representative. The fact of our sin ought to quash any sense of pride in us. The fact that Jesus offered himself as payment for us ought to dismantle any prideful sense in us that the gospel is true, because it is ours. Jesus didn't claim to be my truth, my way, and my life. He claimed to be the way, the truth, the life. That's where I'm going to leave you off, and I want you to think about that phrase. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. And after that, he says, no one comes to the Father except through me. So when we see this, a film like The Last Days, Steven Spielberg, it's on Netflix. Again, highly recommend. You got to watch it. Made in like nearly over 20 years ago, still applicable today. Watch it. Watch and think about how some of those things that the Nazis did are being applied to critical race theory and how they're being used on one side of the aisle, and I think you know who I'm talking about. Not saying Republicans are perfect, not saying libertarians are great, not saying Democrats are, free from sin either. Everybody has a problem, and you better get right with God because time is short, as you could see with those raindrops I had to dodge. Time is short, and who knows how long this video is going to last with how YouTube is being recently. Yeah, so just something to think about, you guys. I love you guys. Think about, how you can be kind to one another and how you can show the love of Jesus to each other. I'm going to make a video. My next cover is going to be Jeremy Camp, which is coming out very soon. It'll be exciting. It's not Hillsong, it's not Elevation or Maverick City. So it'll be a little different, old school artist, but new school song, I guess you could say. So it's kind of cool. So be on the lookout for that. And there's other stuff I'm working on too. So yeah, I'm praying for you guys. Hope you have a great week and a blessed one. Take care. Bye.